and get what I need over here. And I have to share the screen with chapter 3. Nope. Here we go. Okay. We're going to look at a few psukim. We're in the middle of chapter 3. We're going to Bezrat Hashem finish it finally tonight. We're going to look at like 3 or 4 psukim, Kaf Zayin through Lamed, and that's what's number 27 to 30, and that's what's on your screen right now. And first, let's just read the words. You'll notice that there is a shift from the grand, big picture things that we were talking about before to more personal, interpersonal issues that we're going to see as well. Al timna tov mi be'alav. Do not withhold good from those who deserve it. V'hiyot le'el yadecha la'asot. When you have the power to do it. El, aleph lamed, does not mean God. It means power. It's the root of the word Elohim, God. But it means he's the source of all power. So the first pasuk says, someone who deserves good from you, make sure you take care of it right away. Second pasuk, al tomar lereyecha lech v'shuv machar umachar eten v'yesh itach al tachrosh al reyecha ra'a uyoshev levetach itach. English, do not say to your fellow, come back again, I'll give it tomorrow, when you actually have it. It could be a payment, it could be something you borrowed. Do not devise harm against your fellow who lives trustfully with you. Last pasuk, al tariv im adam chinam lo gemalcha ra'a. Do not quarrel with someone for no cause. They may have done you no harm. Now, again, these psukim are dealing with things that are interpersonal relationships, how you treat your fellow person. And Midrash Mishle tells us that these few psukim are all about one topic, and that is the act of being good, of doing good things. Now, I don't know if you know this, but etymologically, the word God is from good, because God is the source of all goodness. In English, I'm talking about, obviously. Hashem gave us the capacity to do good. We know that there are things that we are supposed to do that are supposed to be imitating Hashem. What do I mean imitating? Not to make fun, but to do like Hashem. Like we know the famous ones. You visit the sick like Hashem visited the sick. You bury the dead like Hashem buried the dead, etc. But also it's acts of goodness. But it's not just the act itself. When you are supposed to do something for somebody, you're going to do them a favor. You're going to do something nice for them, whatever it is. When the opportunity arises, do it. Don't put it off. Rashi tells us that withholding yourself from doing something good for another person, even though you eventually do it, it itself is not okay. It's a form of wrongdoing. Now, the other person may have absolutely no idea whatsoever that you're going to be doing this. But once that opportunity presents, and that's a word we're going to use in a couple of minutes multiple times, when an opportunity presents to do good to your fellow human being, do it. Delaying kindness, according to the Radak, is almost a form of a moral failure. It's not just inconvenience, you're not going to do it. It's something wrong. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean, delaying kindness? Let's assume for a moment that there's somebody who's not feeling so good. You haven't seen them in shul, or you haven't seen them in the store lately, or you hear that they're maybe not feeling okay. So your inclination should be, I really should I'll get a hold of that person. Maybe I'll send them a WhatsApp. Maybe I'll call. Maybe I'll just ask their spouse or kid, whoever it is. And that's great. And that's how you should react. But then life gets in the way. If you're like me, you pick up your phone to text somebody like how you're feeling, and you forget as you go into WhatsApp, like, wait, who was I texting now? I do that all the time. And then maybe a day or so later, I remember. But assuming you remember at that moment, and unless you can't, some things sometimes prevent you. Someone you're passing by in the parking lot, you're loading your groceries in the car, and someone says, oh, by the way, I heard, I don't know if you know, but so-and-so was sick. Well, it doesn't mean you have to leave your groceries in the middle of the parking lot, drop everything, but it means that the first convenient moment to do something positive for another person, do it, and do it at that point. And the more you put it off, they're not going to know you put it off, but you know that you put it off. Hashem knows you put it off, and therefore you should try to do it as early as possible. The Midrash really tells us that opportunities for kindness are moments of divine intent. What does that mean? When you have an opportunity to do something, I'll give you a good example. Someone posts in a group, and it's a legitimate post. It's not trying to get money out of you that's fake. That there's some that I'll give you a good example. It was a couple of weeks ago. There was a fire in one in a home, a devastating fire. It was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't remember. And I belong to this. Maybe some of you do too. A bitachon, or a security group here in Ma'ale Adumim. And the woman running it, who's fantastic, said that they lost pretty much everything. And of course, insurance will pay for some things, but they need things now. And they need to be able to, whatever it is. And within a matter of minutes, they were able to raise a tremendous amount of money to help these people. And if you hesitate, what does that mean? The Midrash tells us that moment that I read that message, the moment that you read that message and you had this thought, oh, you know what? I really never give 18 shekel. I'll give 100 shekel, 5, whatever it might be. Doesn't make a difference. The amount, it means that you took action. It's a moment that Hashem gave you an opportunity to help your fellow Jew. Saying tomorrow, which is always a day away, saying tomorrow is in a sense almost saying, you know what, thank you Hashem for this opportunity, but let me put it off until tomorrow. And you may do it tomorrow, and that's also fantastic, but it's not the same thing as doing it at the right moment, at that moment. And again, yes, there are reasons why things you might not be able to take care of right away. These psukim, these couple, 2, 3 psukim, give us a perspective that we are constantly being provided opportunities from Hashem. Not just bein adam l'makom. No, a person gets up in the morning, there are many, many opportunities for mitzvot. Washing your yadayim, saying brachot, putting it for a man, putting on tefillin and his talit, tefillah, learning Torah before or after davening. All these things, there are many, many things that come up very quickly in the morning of bein adam l'makom, between us and Hashem. But we have, and those are opportunities. Every one of them is an opportunity. As soon as you wake up, there are opportunities to do mitzvot. We don't always have that same perspective when it comes to ben adam l'chavero, between man and us and our fellow man. And that is, and I use the term man generally for human beings, fellow Jews, that we do these mitzvot. Sometimes I'll get to it later. Imagine you wake up in the morning and you didn't put on your tefillin for some reason. I'll do it later on. I'll do it later on. I'll do it later. Before you know it, especially in the winter, chas v'shalom, now the whole day is shot. It's already after dark and you didn't put on your tefillin. That's a problem. We don't hopefully generally do stuff like that. Someone who's a practicing normative Orthodox Jew will put on the tefillin they need to put on the tefillin. It could have other repercussions of a woman. Sometimes it's a man, but usually it's a woman lighting Shabbat candles. Okay, I know I have, it's 40 minutes. I got 20 minutes. I still got 5 minutes till Shkia. And boom, all of a sudden you realize, oops, it's already Shkia. It's sunset. Can't light candles anymore. You messed up. Those moments that Hashem sends us, we don't necessarily realize it all the time, but it's a form of hashgacha pratit. Let me explain what that means. Hashgacha pratit means our constant individualized overwatch from Hashem. Normally what we think about hashgacha pratit is that somebody was supposed to drive down one street, and for some reason they changed their mind, they went down the other street, and on the street they were going to go down, there was a car accident. They would have been stuck for a long time, and Hashem stepped in to save me. And yes, he did. But I heard a phenomenal shir recently. It's based on chapter 9 of Igeret HaKodesh. That's part of Tanya, continuation of Tanya, that the teacher was explaining that the Mar HaZaken, the Alter Rebbe, the author of Tanya, said, or was it the Bavitcher Rebbe Zatzal? I forgot which one of the two ends said this. I'll say a sentence and I'll explain it. Hashgacha pratit is mechayev. Let me explain to you what that means. In that case, let me give you a different case. You're supposed to be flying to a lot for whatever reason. Oh, wait a second. Right, hold on. Let's get this all cleared up. Moment, please.
Oh, yeah?
Wait one second. There we go. Okay, got it. You're supposed to, you're at Ben Gurion, you're in Terminal 1, which I think where a lot of flights are. And you get there and you just missed your flight. And then you find out that there was all kinds of problems with that particular airplane, and they had to turn around, and then you would have had all kinds of problems. Fine, hashgacha pratit. Hashem watched over me. I didn't have that problem. No, it wasn't danger, but just it was an inconvenience. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that moment when you missed that plane, and that was hashgacha pratit, that you are where you are, it's mechayev. You have to ask yourself, why am I there? Why did I get on this bus instead of that bus? Why did I turn down that street instead of that street? There's a reason. You have to always be asking yourself, Hashem is sending me these opportunities. Hashgacha pratit is also an opportunity. Not just he put you in the right place at the right time, but now what? Why am I here? This is a story I've told already a few times in different classes. Also having to do with the Lubavitcher Rebbe when he was alive. There was a woman who was flying out of New York, and a very strong Chabadnik, a woman who was very much into the Chabad world. And not only she missed her flight, there'll be many, many, many hours. I don't know if maybe to the next day she was going to get a flight out. And she called the Rebbe, Zatzal, and got his secretary. And the secretary said, how can I help you? And she said, I need to talk to the Rebbe. He says, you can't just talk to him. What is it you need? I'll pass it along. He says, well, I'm stuck here at JFK. I don't know what to do. A few minutes later, the secretary, he calls her back and said, the Rebbe wants to know, what does it mean stuck? So she said, well, it means I'm not where I'm supposed to be. He says, no, I understand the word in English, stuck. But what do you mean you're stuck? He says, a Jew is never stuck. He says, if you're there, there's a reason. That's hashgacha pratit. Hashem has you there for a reason. You now need to ask yourself, why am I there? And I know every one of you, and people hear this later, and myself included, have been in hundreds of situations where we were in a situation where that wasn't our plan. But something else happened that changed our plans. And it's always for a reason. It's not just stam. Hashem doesn't roll the dice. There's a reason for these things. And that's what these psukim first that we just did really are about. That it's not just, it's nice to help your fellow man, not just as a mitzvah to do ben adam lechavero, between you and your fellow man, you have to do good things. But when the opportunities arise, they are a form of hashgacha pratit, Hashem's divine intervention, and go ahead and take action on them. That's one. Let's do the next couple of psukim. We see it on the screen. Oh, okay. Before, let me take a couple more comments on these other psukim here. What does it mean? Don't say to your fellow man, come back again. I'll give it to you tomorrow. Again, this is, let's say you borrowed somebody's whatever, iPad, whatever it might be. And you have it. They come to pick it up. They said, no, listen, I forgot it at the office. I'll come back tomorrow. And it's sitting right on your table. Okay, why is that wrong? I mean, if he gave it to you, you're allowed to have it. You're allowed to keep, unless he told you differently, you're allowed to keep it until he needs it back. So it's what's called ona'ah. What is ona'ah? First of all, it can mean verbal abuse. But it can mean you're causing someone pain with your words. There's no reason to force that person to come tomorrow. You're not allowed, for example, I'll give you a practical example of what is ona'at dvarim. Let's say you invite somebody for a meal for Shabbat. And absolutely, positively, 100%, they have no intention of accepting your invitation. They don't trust you. They find you boring. They don't like your family, whatever it might be. It doesn't make a difference, the reason. And they say to you, I'll get back to you. I'll let you know tomorrow. Now, in the meantime, again, they have no intention. But in the meantime, you're thinking, oh, they might say they're going to join us. That time period, and then later they say, not going to join you. They don't know that you didn't think about it. They don't know that you didn't talk to your spouse, whatever it might be. It doesn't make a difference. That you gave them this thought that you might come, that's already a form of ona'ah. You be very careful with your words. It's a similar idea. Come tomorrow and I'll let you know. When you already know, it's already with you. It's already with you, or itach. It's already with you, meaning your answer. Don't push the person up. Say, listen, I'm really sorry. You don't have to say the reason, like I don't like you, or are you boring, or whatever it might be. There's no reason to have to say that. You don't want to hurt someone's feelings. But say, look, but thank you very much. You can be gracious about it. And don't get into an argument with somebody for no reason. There are people who love to argue. There is nothing wrong with a disagreement. I think, as a matter of fact, because disagreements are very healthy. As I said the other day in the Pirkei Avot class, you open up, you just flip open any page of any Masechta, of any Gemara in Talmud Bavli, and you're going to find on that page that there's a disagreement. Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, Rav, Shmuel, Rava, Abaye. It's constant. It's what that builds. It builds energy. It helps to make you think about, oh, I didn't think about that perspective. Maybe I should be thinking about this way. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But to pick, what we'd say in English, to pick a fight, that's chinam. That's for nothing. There's no reason. You may come out of a meeting, you may walk out of your house, you may walk out of a store raging mad about something, which itself isn't a good thing. But let's assume for a moment you did. You walked out, and now the first person says to you, "By the way, do you know how to get to the mall?" You say, "Oh, leave me alone." Blah, 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 blah. No, they didn't do anything wrong to you. They're an innocent little bystander. You gotta be very careful how you relate to the other person. So all these psukim are how we relate, even when the other person has absolutely no idea that you are holding something back. You're not giving them something that they deserve good. Something you might want to do for them nice. Anything like that is really a very bad midah. Let's continue in the red section. Al tikaneh be'ish chamas. Do not be envious of someone who is lawless. Al tivchar b'chol derachav, and don't choose any of his ways. We're going to talk about this one specifically. Ki to'avat Hashem naloz. For one who goes astray is an abomination to God. Ve'et isharim sodo, but the straightforward are intimates. Let's see what that means. Me'erat Hashem bevet rasha. God's curse is on the house of the evildoer. Unevet tzadikim yivarech, but the house of the righteous is blessed. Im laleitzim hu yalitz. At scoffers Hashem scoffs. V'la'anavim, with a vav, not with a bet that means grapes. Anavim, people who are humble. Yitain chen, he will show his grace. Kavod chachamim nimchalu uchsilim merim kolon. The wise shall obtain honor, but dullards get disgrace as their portion. Okay, this now has to do not of how you treat somebody else per se, but how you view other people and how you interact with other people and the company that you keep. Let's talk a little bit about these psukim, and then I'll show you a very interesting comment from a Targum, a commentary on the Torah. We'll see in a minute. Envy is the first issue. Do not be envious of someone who's lawless. Why would you be envious of someone who's lawless? Well, unfortunately, very often you'll find people who don't necessarily keep to the law end up richer, more famous. They end up their face in the news, whatever it might be. You might say, I wish that was me. You might feel that way sometimes, but that's a distortion of perception of what reality is. Because the violent man only appears successful because he sees the present, or one of the outside sees the present and doesn't see the future. The idea is you have to, we have seen this before, you've seen this in Pirkei Avot and others, Ezeu Chacham, who's considered wise, Hagoet Hanolad. You see, literally means that which is born. But look, the guy did something, or the lady did something wrong, and you probably get caught, chances are. You spend time in jail. So what is it you're envious of? The money? They can't spend it themselves, right? They're stuck in jail. Which brings us to the pasuk, or a couple psukim in Yaseret HaDibrot that we read yesterday in Shul, and I want to talk about that for a couple minutes. I'm not going to give a shir now. I gave a shir a number of years ago. If you're interested, I'm happy to send it along. On lo tachmod, you should not covet, because it doesn't mean you shouldn't be jealous. That's not what it means. It is very little connection to jealousy and lo tachmod. They're different planets. But what it basically is, let's just assume I'm going to use the term jealousy, even though that's not what it really means. I want what he has. I want what she has. I want that. I want that specific thing that she has. What is the problem with that? It's only here. It's only here. It's a feeling. You didn't do anything. Matter of fact, according to some opinions, as soon as you had, there's two times. Once Torah says lo tachmod, the other one says lo tit aveh. So the opinion is not if you didn't do anything, you didn't even try to get the thing, you didn't try to convince the person to give it to you. You just thought about it, you felt it already, according to some opinions. That's a big problem. It's an isur, it's a prohibition. But why? Because it's a lack of emunah. What emunah? The emunah, the belief and faith in Hashem, that you have exactly what you need. Now, if that's true, if you feel you have exactly what you need, why should you ever ask your boss for a raise? Why should you ever try to better yourself? Why should you ever not go to another company and make more money? God thinks I should make, 5 shekel an hour instead of 25 shekel an hour. That's the way it is. Now, there's nothing wrong with trying to improve yourself that way, because that's the way the world works. That's how Hashem put us into this world. But is when it comes to material possessions that are in the hands of somebody else, you're allowed to say, you know what, I really like their car, I like their house, I like their whatever it might be, and I want to aspire to get something like that. That's okay. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But to do other things which fall into latachmon, which I'm not going to get into now, are not okay, because again, it's a lack of emunah. It's a lack of faith in Hashem. That means, I didn't get what I'm supposed to get, and I have to work around God and make sure I get what I deserve. So when I want to look at a slide, move it down here just a second. A preface to this next slide. This past Friday night, so I guess that's 2 nights ago, I had the opportunity to speak at Pnei Shmuel. Rav Aviner was away, and I was asked to speak. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to say the whole thing, but tell you briefly what I said, because it fits in exactly right here. When we take a look at the Aseret HaDibrot, so we can understand the first half. When you look at it as 2 halves, the first 5 and the second 5, the first 5 are real, what he called chidushim. They're novel. The idea that there's only one God, that you shouldn't swear falsely in his name, you shouldn't make idols, you should keep Shabbat, you should honor your parents. Those are all chidushim. Those are all like new ideas for the world. Before the Torah was given, I imagine people, Jew and non-Jew, had some respect for their parents, but it wasn't in a mechayev way that you had to do it, and what to the extent you had to do it. The idea of monotheism was since Abraham Avinu was pretty much within the Jewish people. It was a polytheistic world. The idea of not swearing falsely by God's name, again, that made sense. Now go off to the second half, and you come to things that are what are called sichli. They're logical. That not only are they logical, there isn't a country in the world, even the most evil countries, still have certain basic laws. You're not allowed to murder. You're not allowed to steal. These are basics. And not only that, the 99% of Jews, let's just talk about the Jewish people, 99% of the Jews are not murderers. I'll be very nice and kind. 90% of Jews are not ganavim, are not thieves. So why are these making it into the top 10? They're big, important, but maybe certain things, those should have been part of a psukim somewhere in the Torah, elsewhere, and put something else bigger, quote unquote, in there. It doesn't apply to most people. It applies. I'm not allowed to murder. You're not allowed to murder. But would it ever occur to you, other than as a joke in your head, I want to really kill that guy? God forbid. It doesn't apply. So why did it make it in the top 10? So we take a look now. Besides Onkelos, who was a ger, who was a convert, who gave us a magnificent translation of the Tanakh of Torah into Aramaic, but not just a translation. He wove in commentary and explanations. He changed his words that we should understand it. And Rashi quotes him all the time. There's another Targum by a man named Yonatan ben Uziel. And he gives a Targum. It's much longer, the words, than the words of the Targum Onkelos. And this is what he said. And he says it in multiple, the same thing about three different mitzvot. I'm going to read just one, because it's the same thing about all of them. He says like this. What does it mean? It says, lo tirtzach, don't murder. Now you'll notice from those 2 words, he has 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of text. He says those 2 lines, those 2 words, we have a whole thing. Ami b'nei Yisrael, my people, sons of Israel. Lo tehavun ktolim, don't be murderers. So far, so good. That's what it said. Right there, he could have stopped. He goes on. Not only should you not be a murderer, lo chavrin v'lo shutafin ktolim, nor should you be companions, like friends or partners with murderers. Lo yitchameh b'kinei shtahon Yisrael im ketolin. You should not be in the congregations of Israel. That, what does it say here in English? Shall not be seen a murderous people. You shouldn't have your sons rise up after you and teach one. What happens here? He says, for on account of the guilt of the murder, the sword cometh forth upon the world. Okay, normal English, that means that you cause disaster by being involved with people who are murderers. You cause disaster with people who are adulterers. You cause disaster among yourselves and your personal moral fiber coming in contact with and partnering up with people who are ganavim, even though the word lotigno means kidnapping in this sense, in the Aseret HaDibrot, which is why it's there. But what's he telling us here? I'm going to end the screen share here. What's he telling us here? He's saying that when it comes to the issue of don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, that these things are not just limited to that. Don't kill. Okay, I knew that without Hashem telling me in a sense. I would have known that. But he's saying it's much more than that. It's how people associate with wrong kinds of people. What happens? Look at it. I'm not going to go into it. I'll read when you get a chance. Just look at the first chapter of Tehillim and the very first couple of psukim. It's exactly what it's about how you can get sucked in when you're with the wrong kinds of people. So what did I say Friday night besides translating that and saying that? And so we see two examples that are polar opposites in halacha, in the Torah, that really bring this idea home. One is something called an ir miklat. Ir miklat was if somebody kills somebody by accident, then technically the next of kin has the right to kill the guy who killed someone by accident. What can he do? He's allowed to run to what's called an ir miklat, the city of refuge, and there he's safe. It's like being free on base, and no one can touch him. As a matter of fact, if the next of kin goes into the ir miklat and kills this guy, it's murder. If he kills him outside, it's not murder. It's justifiable homicide. So what do they do in order for the person to know where the ir miklat was? So they put signs up all over the country that would point and said miklat, as opposed to the kind of signs we have here. It doesn't mean a bomb shelter. It means a miklat, but to the ir miklat, the city of refuge. But it's the same word. Kolet, to absorb. Klita, absorption. Like also, I don't have klita on my phone. It's all the same word. So they would have these signs all over the place. It said, Tachin lecha haderech, prepare the way. That also meant that the roads leading to the Arei Miklat, to the cities of refuge, had to be cleared. They couldn't just say, okay, here, this way the Ir Miklat. Now you have to travel, climb up a big mountain, and it's all thorns and rocks. Why was that necessary? Why couldn't they just have people just, they're going to find their way. They'll ask, yes, they have to get there fast, but they didn't have to have it such an elaborate scheme that they had to clear the roads and make sure the good pathways and many, many, many signs. It's at all major intersections. That's one part. The flip side is something called bikurim, which some of you I'm sure are familiar with, the beginning of Parshat Kitavo. When a person would grow any of the 7 species, the Shivat Taminim here in Israel, the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the very first fruits that would grow, they would tie a ribbon around it, and as soon as they became mature, they would take them, they bring them in baskets, and they bring them to Yerushalayim. As a matter of fact, the Mishnah mentions Motza. If you're coming from Tel Aviv to Yerushalayim, you'll notice that there's a city called Motza, Mem Vav Tzadi Aleph, that people would sleep in the streets there, and then they would go up and they would dance to Yerushalayim. They dance up to bring their bikurim. In those cases, there were no signs that said which way was to Yerushalayim. Someone might have been coming from the Galil, and they have to find their way to Yerushalayim. What do they have to do? They have to stop. They have to go into the markets. They have to go to the communities. How do I get to Yerushalayim? Which way? What road do I use? They didn't have, and no joke, they didn't have ways. They didn't have maps. They had to use word of mouth. Why? Why, when it came to accidental murder, accidental killing, involuntary manslaughter, whatever the word might be, there were signs helping him every way and didn't talk to a single person. And when it came to bikurim, that they were talking to everybody to find it. So I think the answer might be self-evident based on what I already told you. And that is, when it came to a person who killed by accident, even though it was an accident, he had no malice of forethought, he had no intention to kill, he still did. He still did. And something happens to that person's neshama, something happens to that person's life when he took a life. And Hashem says, I don't want him coming in contact with anybody. Get to your miklat, save your life, but I don't want you talking to anybody. I want there to be any hashpa'ah, any influence from you to that person. Just like Yonatan ben Uziel said, just like I don't want you to be anywhere near someone who killed, anyone who committed adultery, anyone who stole, and who kidnapped, because of what the consequences are for you personally and for Am Yisrael. When it came to this situation, forget it. Here's your signs, here's your road, find your way to your miklat. The opposite is true, though, when it came to Bikurim. Hashem wanted people to come in contact with everyone they could on the way, because this way they will be able to say, where are you going? I'm going to Yerushalayim, and spread the wealth, meaning the Hoda'at Hashem, the thank you to Hashem. That was a good and a positive thing to be associated with those types of people. We also see this, the concept of Rasha Oy L'Shcheno, woe unto the person and to the bad neighbor and person who is his neighbor, and Tov L'Rasha, Tov L'Shcheno. Good is the person who's good, and bad and good for the neighbor to someone who is good as well. Just see if I had anything else on this. Okay, so a couple more words I want to look at. I'm going to put that back on the screen. The parak. 1 second. Okay, so I said I want to come back to wrong slide. You take a look here. It says, okay. Hashem nalos, Hashem's those who go astray is an abomination to Hashem, meaning the ones who distort Torah, that itself is an abomination. Then it says vet yisharim sodo. What does that mean? The straightforward says here, the straightforward are intimates. I don't know if that means even normal English. The word sod usually means secret. Often in Torah, the word sod doesn't just mean secret, it also means Kabbalah or Kabbalistic thought. But here the word sod does not mean secret information, it means clarity. A person gets the clarity of thought, how the world truly operates. What have we seen in this chapter? We've seen from the grandiose cosmic level of the universe and Hashem's chokhmah, and how we're supposed to harness that chokhmah, what it does for us, that wisdom. We've seen it on the human level. We've seen that Torah is the order that stabilized creation in the first place. That same order stabilizes the soul, the neshama, the inner peace one gets, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, from this alignment between what is maybe makes us feel good versus what we're supposed to do. Our ethical lives, how we're supposed to treat each other, and not just Hashem. That honor, kavod, is a long-term truth that we have to live with, and that to live without Torah is not just quote an aveira or sin. It's to live out of sync with reality itself, because reality is Torah. It's one of the psukim we talked about at the beginning of the parak. Eitz chaim hi l'machazikim ba. It's a tree of life to those who cling to it, which means that if you don't cling to it, you're missing the boat. Okay, so that is this chapter. I want to take a look. Let me get it to close this here. Let me call up the next chapter. 1 moment, please. Close this and say yes. Save. Call this up. Chapter Dalet. Okay, we're going to move for a few minutes into Parak Dalet, chapter 4 in Mishle. And I'm going to look at 2 psukim first. As I mentioned a long time ago, I believe it was 10, the first 10 chapters deal with the topic of chokhmah, or wisdom. And again, we've seen it on many different levels. Hashem's wisdom, our wisdom between us and Hashem, wisdom bein adam lechavero, between us and our fellow man, Torah as a way of life, all these different levels. We're going to see a couple different approaches now in this particular couple psukim and this parak in general. Reshit chokhmah, kinei chokhmah. The beginning of wisdom is to acquire wisdom. We'll see what that means. V'chol kinyancha kinei vina. With all your acquisitions, acquire bina. We said bina means discernment, which means lavin davar mitoch davar, the ability to take information, process it, and from what you have, be able to figure out something else or the next step. Salsalea utaromemecha, hug her, and she will exalt you. Teromemeka. Techabedcha ki techabkena. She will bring you honor if you embrace her. Referring to chokhmah. Again, personification of wisdom. Titein leroshcha livyatchen. She will adorn your head with a graceful wreath. Ateret tiferet timageneka. And crown you with a glorious diadem, a crown. Okay, very fancy words. What is it talking? What does it mean? I want to check something. Yeah, I knew I made a mistake. I jumped ahead. I knew I jumped ahead. Okay, let's go back because I know the opposite of kinyan or acquisition of wisdom comes after this. So, okay, let's try that again. We're going to start with chapter 4. We read the first couple psukim. Shimu vani musar av, son, heed the discipline of a father. Bakshivu ladat bina, and listen and learn discernment. Again, bina, which I just explained. Next pasuk you all know. Ki lekach tov natati lachem. I have given you good instruction. Torati al ta'azov. Do not forsake my teaching. The word Torah means, from the word lahorot, to teach. It's the teaching with a capital TH. Ki ben hayiti la'avi. I was a son to my father. Rach v'yachid lifnei imi. Tender darling of my mother. Vayoreni vayomerli. He taught me. My father taught me and said to me, Itmach dvarai libecha, shmor mitzotai v'chyeh. Let your mind hold on to my words, keep my commandments, and you will live. K'nei chokhmah, k'nei bina. Acquire wisdom, acquire bina, or discernment. Al tishkach, v'al tet meim refi. Do not forget, do not swerve from my words. Al ta'azveha v'tishbereka. Eheveha v'titzreka. Do not forsake her, and she will guard you. Love her, and she will protect you. So these words that we're starting with here at the beginning of this parak, Shlomo Melech opens up not with an argument and not with where he's been in certain places, especially beginning of chapter 3, very forceful. Now he's opening up with a voice. He says, Shimu vanim, listen, my children. He's talking to every one of us, not just Shema b'ni. Now it's Shimu vanim. He's talking in plural. It's not a detached voice of some pie in the sky philosopher. It's a person. It's a tone of a father addressing his children, which we see already in the next couple of psukim. We'll come back to them in a minute. And Mishle tells us that the Torah is best received if we look at it as a relationship. If we look at it as a relationship that comes with an instruction manual, it comes wrapped with care, comes wrapped with love. If a husband gives his wife, or a wife gives her husband a book of, here's what I love about you, here's what I appreciate about you, here's what I really want to say thank you for, it's a very special gift. Incidentally, in parentheses, you should always be very grateful to anybody, especially your spouse, for anything you were given, anything that's done for you. But that book is something very special. It's not meant to be tossed aside. It's meant to be looked at and read and reread and incorporated by the recipient, because it's really handing over the neshama of the spouse to the other one. It builds the relationship, and that's what the Torah is supposed to do. The Midrash says that the Torah is, if we look at just a bunch of thou shalt and thou shalt not, makes it very difficult to go through life. I told you before, I think, not in this class, but I've said it in other classes, that when I talk about Shabbat with kids, I don't mean little kids, but let's say, before teen, preteen, and teenagers especially, I'll say, okay, tell me some things about Shabbat. Name 3 things about Shabbat. And I'm very vague. If they say, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, they see Shabbat as a bunch of no. They say, we get to go to shul more, we get to go with family, we eat nicer meals, and they're looking at it as a positive. So again, it's a person's perspective also when it comes to Torah. If you look at Torah, I can't work on Shabbat, I have to wear tzitzit, I have to put on tefillin, I can't. That's all you're looking at is just an instruction book. That's all it is. And it's not. It's not at all. And that's the whole point of the last chapter, chapter 3. It's Chaim Hi. And he continues here, which with this Kilekach Tov Natati Lachem. Musar, he uses the word Bina and Musar. Musar is discipline of behavior, how you act. Bina refines the person's understanding. In other words, when a child is little and you tell them, don't touch the fire, they don't understand until they do. Why? So don't touch the fire. Why? What's going to happen? I'll touch, big deal. I'll touch the fire. I'll touch a glass of water. When they touch the fire for the first time on purpose or by accident, they learn very quickly why not to touch something hot. So the Musar is the discipline of the behavior. The Bina is the understanding now why I can't do these things or why I'm supposed to do these things. And Torah educates the entire person. When Shlomo HaMelech says, Ki lekach tov natati lachem, first I want you to understand the word lekach in the word in modern Hebrew. Lekach means a lesson. So if I say I'm going to give a Dvar Torah, and I say halekach mizeh, the lesson to be gained from this. So it's also a lekicha, it's something you've acquired, something you've taken, that you've internalized. It's not something you just hear, but you actually internalize it. If you go to a shiur and you hear about how you should treat your fellow man, or you go to a shiur and see how you're supposed to daven, you go to a shiur and hear blah, 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 whatever it might be, if you internalize it, you take the lesson, that's ki lekach tov natati lachem. Hashem's giving this lesson to us, not just to have in our hands, so to speak, but it's supposed to be part of us. Torati al ta'azovu, we shouldn't forsake the Torah. It's not just Torah, it's Torati al ta'azovu. Hashem is, Shlomo HaMelech is saying about Hashem, that my Torah, it's Hashem's after all. It's, we can never detach Torah from Hashem, because once you do that, the game's over. So already we hear the central theme of this parak that's coming up, his introductory couple of psukim. Torah is not just divine truth, it's Mesorah. It's a tradition that's carried on from generation to generation, which is why the next couple of psukim that we read already, he says, I was a child to my father. Who was his father? David HaMelech. And he says that taught me that just like I am part of that, just like my father was part of that chain and his father was his father, so too am I part of that chain. And he's speaking to us because he starts off by saying, Shimuvanim Musar Av. Why does it say it like that? He could just say Shimuvanim or Shema Beni. Why does it mean Musar Av? Because again, he's putting himself in position of father to child, parent to child, Hashem to Am Yisrael, the same concept that we are an unbroken chain for centuries of carrying on Hashem's Torah. Okay. Bezrat Hashem, we will continue with chapter 4 next week. I'll probably do the psukim in the right order this time. And you'll see this theme of Bina and Chokhmah and what's the word? You have your responsibility to self, responsibility to Am Yisrael, responsibility to Hashem is a theme that's going to continue quite a bit in this chapter. All right, Shavua Tov, everybody, and thank you for being here. Great evening.